Hi guys, my name is John Park and welcome to another tutorial session on Foundation. For today's lesson, we're going to be focusing on design, and more specifically, we're actually going to be designing a particular object and try to put different types of scenarios with this object. So let's get started. So for today's object, I decided to go with a bridge. And I wanted to start off something a little bit more simple yet structural. And I thought a bridge might be a really cool environmental prop that we can basically study and also try to redesign using different scenarios or different objectives. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually collect some reference, and this is what I would like you guys to do, is collect some reference and basically make sure you have anywhere from 3 to 5 images that best represents the type of object that you want to design, and make sure that they're all within the same category or within the same subject matter. Otherwise it's not going to quite work out. So that's kind of what I did here. I chose different types of bridges, and I'm going to go ahead and choose one to basically just do a quick study of. So for the second step, I'm going to go ahead and pick a hard brush. Has 100% opacity here, and since we're drawing on Photoshop today, I just want to get familiar with the lines and kind of finesse and kind of do some of those practices that we did in the previous videos. If you guys haven't seen, we do a lot of traditional drawing practices in the dynamic sketching series, and I just want to get our finesse up to par, and that's going to be basically what I just want to do before we get into the actual drawing aspect. Okay? Alright, step 2. I'm going to copy one of these from observation, and it's just to get familiar with the visual language. And I'm going to go ahead and use a hard brush, and if you want a slightly lighter touch here, I'm going to drop the opacity down to about 70 to 80%. You know, it's all based on preference, but my pixel that I actually draw with is anywhere from 1 to 2 pixels, or of your liking, but I generally try to keep it relatively a smaller line weight. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw this thing out. So I'm going to first start off with just a simple block out of the structure. Start off with the basic shapes here. Just want to make sure that this is relatively accurate based on my image, but most importantly, I want to make sure that it's a good visual representation of our object. Okay, and then we got kind of the little structures here. Just gonna go ahead and just draw that out. And I'm gonna just say, try to refrain yourself from tracing this stuff, only because there's something about just drawing it out, especially in this phase, that's going to really help benefit us getting more familiar with the object, because you're forced to kind of look at it, analyze, and see exactly what the details are doing. If you need to, I'm going to go ahead and grab this image here. Just going to duplicate it and put it on top, just so that I can just focus on this drawing. Okay, notice how I'm actually just only drawing the structures. My spacing here is a little off, but let's go ahead and correct that. I'm going to redraw all this. And that's the thing, don't be afraid to redraw things, you know, because this is the best way we're going to learn, is by making mistakes and having to redraw it. It's only going to make us more prolific, but also just more comfortable with drawing. Because drawing can be intimidating, because you know you feel committed to something and you're not sure if it's going to turn out good. But a lot of times, you know, we were trying to get it, you know, hit it in on the first shot, that it never really happens that way. So, you know, I just want to kind of make sure that I can do the best that I can. And if I mess up, just, you know, try it again. Okay, so I'm going to draw the other one, the other little stick structure here. Now it looks like it's kind of like halfway point, so I'm gonna make sure I draw that, but my measurement is slightly off here, so I'm just gonna go in perspective, and it looks like it's landing around here. And I'm just using the 100% hard brush, and I'm using 100% eraser to erase my lines. Now, for those of you who are doing this traditionally, that's no problem at all. I'm just using Photoshop for today's demonstration so that we can actually get the references, you know, because I can show you guys all the references that I have. Okay, now we have roughly about, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sticks, or 6 actually, on this bridge. So I'm just gonna go ahead and measure out based on what I have, because it looks like mine is a little bit shallow or a bit shorter, so I'm gonna do about 5. So this is definitely a lot longer, but I'm gonna go ahead and just draw 5 in. Okay, that's kind of my baseline here. It looks like there's a little bit of a structure here. This image is so low resolution that I wasn't able to tell if it was just a log or if it actually had an actual side. It looks like it actually has a little bit of a side, kind of like a box or something. So we're gonna go ahead and draw that in. Okay. Okay, and let's draw on these little structures here. That's the thing about these props, is that there's so many little details that we take granted for, especially on something that's as simple or, you know, mundane as a bridge. You know, we think like, it's just a bridge, you know, no big deal. But there's actually quite a bit of detail if we look at it. I'm just going to simplify these a bit. Now, if you guys are doing this traditionally, be sure to have you know, your reference printed out on the side so that you can draw it out. You know, you can draw it out on the side here without worrying too much about whether it's, you know, whether you're accurate or inaccurate. You want to make sure you have that stuff printed out. It's just comfortable, you know. Otherwise, you'll have to do what I did before. I would always actually look at a screen, you know, just to kind of measure things out or observe. You know, I noticed my perspective here is slightly off. I'm going to redraw this. Okay, let's draw this structure. Make sure it's relatively in the same kind of perspective here. Okay, now this is all observation. Okay, we're not redesigning this bridge. I'm just literally trying to just, you know, represent the same structure here in perspective. You know, just try your best to get it as close as you can. Okay, so we got that. We're almost there, guys. We are almost there. I know this is like, this is a slow process. Looks like it's ending like right around here, so I'm gonna slightly foreshorten this based on our image here. We have another structure here. And that's going to go way over here. Okay. And also this last peg here. Okay, now we got the base of all the sticks here, or all these like little posts. Let's go ahead and just draw out the smaller details. There's like a little bit of a ledge here. And the way I'm actually drawing this is I'm pressing shift click to actually get these little lines. And then I'm going to do these individual posts here. I'm going to erase out and then draw. these little posts, do the same thing, erase, and then draw. Okay, do that, and then follow this angle down here. Okay, let's do the same thing on this other side. So doing these studies will generally take, a certain amount of time. This angle right here is a little bit funky, but I'm going to go ahead and just try to match it to what I have. But yeah, these studies can take anywhere from a couple hours to even a full day, depending on how complex your object is. But it's well worth it, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to reinterpret this structure or this drawing for redesigning it, and also coming up with different scenarios. And we'll go over that in just one moment here, as soon as I'm done getting all these little details in. So this incline here, because the height of this is incorrect, so I kind of messed up, but I'm hoping that you guys will do it more accurate than I did right here. Okay, do the other side. Get the post in here. Okay, cool. And then let's do this side here. This side's a little bit, I want to try to mimic what I have. Kind of this slightly awkward angle here. Alright, now let's do the vertical lines here. It's like, no, we're not done yet. Gosh, I take for granted how many details this freaking bridge has, man. It's insane. There's so many little details. It's crazy how detailed this thing is. Or actually how much information this thing actually has. Quite a bit of complexity. There's vertical structures here, so let's go ahead and draw that on. Okay. Woo! There we go. There we go, guys. We have our little bridge study. It only took me 20 minutes. Seems like a forever, like an eternity. But basically with this, I want to now go into our next step. Alright guys, so now let's actually get into some designing here. So once we finish the actual drawing, one thing I want to do or discuss is what can we do to really redesign this bridge. So here are some of the scenarios that I want to throw at you guys. What if we did one that was actually broken? Okay, so if you have a bridge that is broken, how would that look like? What can we do? What can we get from this reference or from this keyword, and how can we make this look, convert this into more of a broken theme or a broken design? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the drawing, and this is the only time I'm going to cheat in Photoshop where you know, I'm going to actually use a duplicate of my drawing. As for you guys who's doing this traditionally, you guys are going to have to draw this stuff out again, but you know, let's really mangle this thing. Like, let's just kind of break some of this stuff, and I'm literally going to destroy a lot of this stuff here and just kind of reimagine what this would look like if it was broken. And just get crazy with it. Like, you know, what if this thing was broken here? I'm gonna have my drawing up here just for reference. And what if, you know, some of the sticks and stuff like broke off? And then even like the platform here, I know there's a subtle platform that we should have drawn here, but what if that was actually also broken as well, right? Like it actually kind of came off. And we're seeing the other exposed structure here. And what if this thing was just like totally wrecked? Like there's something that actually went in here and just like broke off. And now how it broke, I mean, I want you guys to get creative and really think about kind of the story behind it, but I'm just imagining that this thing just like some sort of thing or object hit this at a high speed and totally just jacked it up. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning. All right, we have kind of the planks of wood. And even this structure here is broken down. And all this stuff is totally just destroyed, right? You could probably almost obliterate all this stuff in the center here. And what if we actually, what if it like collapsed, right? And it fell to the ground. So we're getting more of like a scenario here where it's like, okay, this thing, there's so much weight that it actually collapsed onto the floor. And now instead of us just drawing some boring looking bridge, now we've actually created some sort of context, right? We created some sort of story context that actually looks fairly interesting. It's great, all these little lines that we have left over, like I'm just gonna leave that stuff because it totally feels like debris or something. You know, parts of this thing still shedding wood and all that stuff. So I'm totally going to capitalize on that. I'm going to leave some areas, some remnants of the design here and there, because I don't want to just break everything. You know, we want to have identifiable structures here and there. So this is something that I'm going to really, it's going to be really interesting to see kind of the before and aftermath. You know, so be sure to save out or have a clean drawing like I have here, and also the broken version. It'll be nice to kind of see the contrast. Maybe this stuff is like slowly broken. Maybe some of this stuff in the back is a little bit still intact, but at least we have kind of the majority. And now that's a totally mangled bridge, right? Just came in just like broken all over the floor. Maybe we have like pieces and other visual cues of things that have fallen. Have some overlapping elements as well. Okay, so there we go. We have a broken bridge. We have a clean bridge. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off, and now we have a broken bridge. Okay, let's just title this right, broken. Let me see if I can handwrite this stuff. Broken. Alright, cool. Before I forget, I should also make sure I indicate just some of the wood slats here. So I was wondering, I was like, oh man, this stuff, the actual walking path is pretty simple, pretty clean. And I totally forgot that there's an actual it's actual, like, you know, planks of wood. Okay, cool. Alright, broken. Now, what's the next one? What if we did one on overgrowth? Alright? And now, with overgrowth, what I'm going to actually take from this is I'm going to take the actual, the original structure, or the original design. Let's title this original. You guys get to watch me handwrite. There we go. All right, original. So we're going to take the original design, and now we're going to overgrowth it. Okay. Now what I'm thinking about, just on a separate color layer, just to show you guys, we want to have kind of this nice arrangement of stuff. So as an example, I'm thinking, like, you know, what if the center here was actually overgrown or something? There's like a lot more growth here in the center, and then as it actually kind of goes out to the edge, there's less and less of this root-like pattern. So in terms of actually thinking about how we distribute the design or the actual textures, if we have our bridge here and we have, this is the entire structure, I want to occupy maybe 70 to 80% of the stuff on top of our structure, and then let the rest 20 to 30% be the actual structure. Okay, so this is something that I want to keep in mind when I'm actually designing or redesigning this stuff. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go ahead and actually draw on top of this thing. Okay, so I'm gonna erase away just some areas where I think I can actually have that overgrowth. Just have the major areas, and any small details, and I'm just gonna directly draw on top. But this is the general gesture that I'm gonna go for. And then let's go ahead and start drawing our tree roots, and I'm gonna actually start with the larger areas, because before we get into all the details of all the little tiny vines and stuff like that, let's actually start drawing all the bigger tree roots before we get into all the smaller bits, only because we want to make sure that we get the composition, or it looks right. All the big elements look right before we get into the smaller details. Okay, so this is gonna have all of this weird webbing and converging and stuff, but then the mass, I definitely want the mass of this tree trunk like structure to really be in the center of this thing, like it's wrapping around. We really get the feel that it's wrapping around this bridge thing. Okay, and then as it's expanding out, it's totally engulfing. It's not necessarily destroying the bridge, it's just building around it. So that's the thing about overgrowth, is completely different from broken, right? The broken theme is that this time it's actually building on top of it. So notice the structures here that I'm introducing, I'm not really necessarily breaking anything, I'm just kind of adding to it. It's a more of an additive design process here. And that's kind of what I'm actually getting from this thing. It's more that additive kind of feel. Okay, and we got the other side. I'm just going to indicate just a little bit here and there. And now I'm just thinking these are all the big structures, like the big pieces, right? And maybe it can actually web down a little bit. Like it can root down, because that's what roots do, right? They kind of spring out. And I definitely want kind of a cooler, bigger gesture here. So what if I actually had some big root thing kind of like swinging over to the other side, and it's connecting. So really feel that it's kind of like a tree growing out. Okay, now it's time for all the details. Now we got all the major root structures. Now it's like we can start to think about, okay, where else can we add the smaller vines and all the little details. So maybe that's the next step. Okay, so the smaller vines, I'm thinking that it's going to first start off, and I'm looking at this stuff right here, all of the smaller shapes. So the small vines are going to be roughly that size, or even smaller. It's going to be like little tiny little veins and lines. So I'm going to start off with the small vines on top of our large roots, and actually let it spindle and wrap around, kind of like the post of our actual bridge here, you know. So roots are like, they're just totally they're kind of invasive, just the way they kind of you know, break out onto these other structures, whether it's like rocks or buildings and stuff like that. It's like it'll grow anywhere and everywhere, you know. Especially these mangrove kind of structures, or these in these temple areas. I don't think these are mangrove, but and it starts to look really organic and gross, right? We got all these like little strange structures. You know, the webbing of it starts to feel really, you know, starts to actually like kind of entangle the bits here. And that's what I'm going to do here, is also show like how it's actually spawning and, you know, wrapping around these little wood planks. But most importantly, we really want to show how it's overgrowing just on top of our structure here. Definitely want more bits here. I'm starting to really get that entangled feel, right? Like completely overgrowth. I mean, it looks so different. Like, I mean, look at that. That's starting to look very different from this. I mean, obviously, but we're really trying to extract and get the feel of, you know, this like huge plant-like structure, you know, growing on top. And now I have leaves and stuff, right? The way I'm drawing leaves is kind of like these little cluster of almost like diamonds. You know, we can draw leaves where it's kind of like little groups of three to five little branches, and they're stemming, right? So if that's the case, then I'm going to draw little leaves here that are stemming from this root. We can have a little bit more variety, so it's not just 100% weird organic overgrowth, but there's a little bit of plant life kind of growing on top. This is what's going to give it just a little bit of that variety that we're really going to, you know, look for here. Okay. All right. There we have it, guys. Overgrowth. Let's title this Overgrowth. I like to hand draw or write out my the little text. Just feels a little bit more, just kind of has more of like a documented feel. But there you go, guys. Now we have broken, we have overgrowth, right? Completely contrasting, very, very drastic change just through the use of reference, but also really changing the scenario. Okay, so let's put this up here. We'll move on to the next one. Go ahead and I'm gonna move all this stuff over so we have a little bit more space for our next drawing. Okay, up next is sticks. Alright, so what I'm thinking about for this particular design direction is obviously our bridge is made up of kind of this wooden structure, but I'm thinking it might be cool what if we made this thing literally made of like sticks or bamboo, right? That'd be really cool, right? Just completely changing the design aesthetic from this to that. So how do we do that? Well, first off, if we really analyze and look at the structure, I mean, they have so many bamboo or little sticks and bits in here to really make up for one large post. So instead of us having like one, really strong structure like this, that's obviously been carved out of wood, this is wood. Man, what if we just created a bundle of sticks that really compensates for that? So we're going to have something more along the lines of this. Bundles of sticks with some sort of wrap. And that is going to be our justification for how we can represent these posts. So let's go ahead and do that, okay? So I'm actually going to erase out and draw some sticks. Erase this out. I'm going to start off with the posts because they're the most obvious, but also the most defined kind of structure. It's kind of the foundation of this this thing. Sticks here. Put up some other stick-like structures here. Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and do that to all of the posts first before we add in all the details. So always remember, work with the larger structures first before you work with any of the smaller details. Okay, so we have the posts and we also have kind of this this plank, right? And now this plank, I'm thinking that it's going to be made up of like all of these smaller sticks, right? Really just kind of bundled together to kind of get that nice vibe that it's made up of multiple elements and multiple pieces. To really get that kind of visual sense that, okay, this thing is, there's no way in hell that they would have been able to get a big piece of wood out in the middle of the jungle. No, they probably bundled together a bunch of bamboo sticks to get a larger, more thicker kind of structure here. So One of the things that I would do to incorporate some of the smaller shapes with the larger structures is, once we've established kind of these little bridge connections, you know, we can then start thinking about like how all the smaller shapes kind of bundle in. And so just like what we did in the previous design iteration, we actually, you know, started off with like the larger roots and stuff like that. And just like the bundles, you know, the stick bundles, we're going to do the same exact thing, right? We're actually going to create these larger shapes and then start introducing the smaller bits. You know, whether it's like details or ties or stuff like that, or tiny bits of like structures or sticks that jet out, that's what we'll do afterwards. Okay, let's do a couple more over here. And be sure to, like, you know, spend as much time as you need. Don't feel obligated, you know, to do the demos or to do the drawings as fast as the demos, because I'm just showing you guys kind of like the general idea. Okay, now I'm gonna add in all of this, some of these more bits here, you know, just to emphasize the structure. Maybe this walking platform can have some of the sticks and stuff sticking out. And just to really emphasize the materials on how this stuff was actually constructed, right? So I'm really thinking about like, okay, if we didn't have access to like planks of wood, right, because it obviously uses like trees and stuff, and we only had bundles of like, you know, trees or bundles of like, you know, branches and like, you know, bamboo sticks like that, how would we actually construct a platform? And basically the logic behind that would be, well, we would have to lay it out horizontally, like, right? And that's the only way we can really justify having a flat surface like the way we have here. Again, I'm always like kind of erasing out. Now, for those of you who are doing this traditionally, I mean, you're going to have to, you know, obviously redraw this. But, you know, just keep in mind some of the shapes, some of the details that do jet out, you know, or make sure you have a eraser in hand, because then it will be a little bit trickier if you don't. And again, you know, we want to put a lot of emphasis towards the center here, so I'm actually going to make these bundles of sticks really jet out. And I really like how that looks. It's just aesthetically, it has a really interesting and very kind of tribal feel about it, like Superman made, you know, by like, you know, these settlers or like these jungle people, you know, this is how they would make a bridge. Add in some textures back here, just to suggest kind of the structures here, and also maybe even like adding a little bit more of this bamboo-like structure in the front. Okay, if we want to get fancy, we can be like, we can stick on like, you know, tiki torches or something. Just to kind of give it that like Polynesian, you know, really tribal-esque vibe to this. And again, the railing and stuff is going to be fairly kind of rigged in a slightly more unorganized manner. So there's going to be a lot of extra bits. So I'm going to basically introduce that. And just even more, just like, I feel like we can add in more base structures underneath. Because look at all of that, man. There's so much stuff happening underneath. Just add a little bit more structure here on the base. Just kind of chaotic. Give it kind of that slightly more chaotic vibe. Alright, well there you have it. A bridge made of sticks. So now we have a bridge, broken bridge. We have overgrowth. And now we have a bridge literally made of sticks. Right? Cool. Alright, now let's go to the next one. I'm going to move this up on top. Let's bring our drawing down here. And let's move on to the next one. Alright, so the next one I have is shanty. Okay, so for a shanty town, what I really like is kind of the improvised kind of look and feel of like all of these metal shapes, like, you know, these metal platforms, you know, tires, sandbags, combination of wood, rubber, plastic bags, fencing, all of this stuff that literally almost makes no sense as an individual object, but when it's put together, we really get the vibe and feel of kind of how this stuff comes alive. And we got the little naked kid right here. He's totally taking a bath. But that's what we're going to convert this into, okay? So let's give that a shot. Now, you know, we've done it previously before where we convert all this stuff into existing, you know, pieces. And one thing I just want to keep in mind is, you know, if we need to draw this stuff out from observation just to get familiar with the pieces, let's go ahead and do that, you know, just get a little bit more acquainted with the visual language of our research. You know, what do shanty structures look like? We got, you know, metal. And we got kind of like what look like sandbags for some sort of foundation. Just to kind of prop things up. And then there's like buckets and stuff, right? But we're gonna go ahead and get started on this. Oh, and also sand. Bags, and then there's like buckets. And like PVC or like piping or some sort. You know, this is going to give it that really rural kind of look. Makes it feel very, very, very poor, you know, not as developed kind of aesthetic. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to figure out ways of replacing all this stuff. So first off, I mean, would they have sticks? Yeah, maybe. Would they have these wall fencings? Probably not. I don't know. So we're just going to go ahead and start erasing this stuff out. You know, see what we can get. And this ground here, let's just obliterate this. Put in like, you know, some sort of sandbags. Just to kind of replace and justify how this thing is actually being propped up. And obviously I don't want to just put sandbags on the base of everything, but just maybe in this area right here. We'll just have it. Okay, with a little bit of this metal girder or like this plate. That's on top here. Maybe that's what all this stuff is. It's just kind of the metal plating. Right, at this point it's like, you know, let's just completely obliterate everything we have and replace it with, you know, this kind of language. Yeah, kind of the piping structure as a language. Oh, and also tires. I noticed that they also have tires like up in here. I think I saw it somewhere. Yeah, there's like rubber tubing and stuff like that. So maybe we can add in rubber tubing or tires. And they got like part of a fencing here that's been nailed or bolted on onto the side. And notice how I like erased out everything. Like the stuff that we didn't, that was from our original bridge. I erased it out, you know, since we don't need it. Okay, do that. Add in more pipes and just wires and just random stuff. I think that's kind of the fun thing about this particular type of genre, is that anything goes. It's so like improvised. It's crazy, right? There's a lot of nonsensical structures that literally make it feel like, how is this thing even holding up? And maybe just having a larger piece of metal that's been corroded away. Okay. Maybe this side has just some sort of like retrofitted railing or something. You know, with like more plates of this metal, like as an actual wall, you know? Anything and everything we can do to really make it super ghetto. That's the goal here. All right. What else? Oh man, we're getting some weird like weights and stuff up here. It's pretty cool. Just to hold things down. Like that's pretty awesome. Like they have literally just what look like little dumbbells or like little weights to keep it down from, you know, blowing out. So we can actually have that too. Little weights and stuff. It almost seems as chaotic as how we drew the stick one, but the challenge about this one is that there's so many different materials that we have to constantly be mindful of what we're putting in. in terms of like the materials. So that's going to be the tricky part here. Because it's not all the same kind of structure. But notice how we're kind of building up to this, right? We're building up to, you know, this complexity of design, of set dressing, and adding detail. Maybe this stuff is actually covered by other metal covers in the front. Right? And notice how as I'm like drawing, I'm erasing out the front part just to create that layering effect. I'm literally going to copy this section here. It's actually pretty neat. Of that kind of design. It's pretty cool to have just kind of this post. With all of this like weird, you know, rotting wood and stuff, you know, it creates such an interesting just visual language that it's not just a normal, you know, sturdy post, or it's not sandbags. Now it's like this completely different material, like old rotting kind of structures here. It's like ropes. You know, we'll add on like old tires and sandbags and stuff around it. Just to really play up the randomness. And again, just more of that scaffolding, like, or the metal, those metal plates. Now I definitely want some more of the larger plates here, because it's getting a little too segmented. There's a lot of small bits, but I'm gonna have a larger plates just so there's an area for our eye to slightly kind of rest and kind of sit on. So it's gonna settle down here a little bit. I'm thinking it might be cool to have this be a little bit more of an actual like fence or something. Again, just to have that material, that variety. That we're looking for. some hoses and stuff like that. But just junkify it up. Really make this, like, if it's clean, then it's not shanty looking enough. We need to make it more shanty looking. I literally think, when I think of shanty, I think of shitty. Make it look shitty. Okay, we'll add some more stuff here. And just to kind of reuse some of these materials, I'm going to use the sandbags out here just to kind of justify the base of this thing. Okay, and then let's add some like pipes. That's one thing I noticed I've been missing a little bit, is more and more pipes. Okay. Maybe more buckets or something out here. You'll notice with this kind of stuff, it can actually get easily very complex. So just be sure to double check and make sure it's fairly legible. Like, a lot of this stuff here got very complex, so I'm actually going to simplify it and add just another big piece of metal here, just to simplify it. It's almost better to simplify things for our readability sake rather than overcomplicating it, because if it's overly complex, then the viewer can't understand it. They can't read it. And that's worse. You know, complexity is never necessarily a good thing. It's only good if it's legible, but it's bad if it makes it difficult or hard to understand. So I'm just going back in here and kind of editing out or simplifying some of these areas to just give it a little bit more visual clarity. That's the most important thing. Alright, there you have it. We have our shanty bridge. Alright, so let's kind of do a recap and look at everything we got. We got the original. We got shanty. Let me pull this here off to the side so we can kind of look at everything at the same time. So we got our original bridge. We have our broken bridge. We have our original, broken. We have our overgrowth bridge. We have our bridge made of sticks, right? We got all of these little stick elements here. Let me just move this off to the side so it doesn't get too distracting. And then we have our bridge made up of shanty parts, metal, sandbags, buckets, pipes, all that stuff, right? So this is basically it, guys. This is kind of the way to design, you know, a singular subject matter with multiple themes and utilizing research. So I hope this was helpful. Let us know if you guys have any questions. Feel free to email us or message us on brainstormjparked@gmail.com, or feel free to email or message Matthew Zickery at mattzickery@yahoo.com. And thank you very much for tuning in on this week's or this month's tutorial session, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Alright guys, it looks like that's going to wrap up the tutorial for this term. You know the drill, it's time for the assignment. For this assignment, we're going to let you guys go ahead and choose one object and complete 4 different variations on it. So obviously we'd love to see the original object, you know, intact, and go ahead and just choose 4 different design directions, and let's see what you guys can do. Looking forward to your submission, guys. Thanks.